Today, Turf Business TV are joined by Scott Brooks, who many of you will know from his time at St George's Park, Arsenal, and before that Tottenham. Scott, welcome to this. You're sat down in Nice. We were hoping we were going to see a bit of sunshine behind you, but you're obviously somewhere quiet.
Yeah, I plonked myself in a little meeting room because I actually share an office with the secretary of the club, and she's lovely French woman, but she talks a lot.
Okay.
So I definitely need to go somewhere quiet.
I'm not going to attempt your job title. What is your new job title down there in Nice?
It's responsable de terrain, which is effectively grounds manager is the translation. So same as it would be in the UK.
So your career path so far, Scott. I mean, we mentioned that you've been at Arsenal, you've been at Tottenham, you've been at St George's Park, all pretty up there in terms of their status, certainly in turf. You started out at Trinity University, I think, though, didn't you?
Yeah, I've been very spoilt in my career in that I've only worked at really prestigious establishments, and I've been very lucky. When I was a young lad in Cambridge, growing up in Cambridge, I actually wanted to join the army. I wanted to be an officer, and I went for all the weekends away with the to sort of get the experience and go through the potential selection process to see whether I can get sponsorship to go to university to then obviously after my degree join as an officer. And they rejected my sponsorship bid and said come back in a couple of years, mainly because I couldn't remember the name of the Secretary of Defence. It was Jeff Hoon at the time, and I was like, and these are quite basic questions if you're going to be an officer. So I probably did deserve the sponsorship, to be honest. And I went into my interview wearing snakeskin loafers, I think, and apparently that doesn't go down too well either.
Okay.
So I didn't get my sponsorship, and I was like, well, what am I going to do now? And I was friends with a guy whose dad was very good friends with Ian Darler, who was the head groundsman at Cambridge United. And I was talking to him one day, and I said, I wouldn't mind having a go at what you do. And I said, no, I bet if I give it a go, I could be the head groundsman at Barcelona in 10 years. I was quite cocky when I was younger. And he said, well, you're joking, but like if you're serious, then you need to take your CV to all the college grounds in Cambridge, because that's a really good place to start out, because you do cricket, football, rugby, tennis, lacrosse, anything you can think of, like all sports. And I just got really lucky in that I took my CV to 10, 15 grounds in Cambridge I just plonked myself in Cambridge on a Saturday and did all the legwork and just popped my head into everywhere, dropped my CV off, and the guy at Trinity was like, I might have a role coming up soon. And within a few months, I'd interviewed and got the job at Trinity. So it was a great place to start. It's really beautiful surroundings, and the guy there, Darren Wood, he's still there now. Actually, he's a really down to earth guy who, just wanted me to feel my way into the industry and helped me a lot. And after a difficult start, I really grew to start loving it and really enjoying it. And I was playing a lot of football, and I was a young lad, like going out in Cambridge on a weekend, and it was a great life. So I was, it was a nice introduction to the industry.
And then I think you spent a couple of years there, and then it was on to one of the best clubs in the world, Tottenham. Were you working with Darren there?
Yeah, so I love football, and it was always the intention to if I was going to be a groundsman, it was going to be in football. And a job for a junior groundsman came up at Tottenham, and I applied, and I had a couple of interviews with Darren, and was very fortunate to get that job. So started at the old training ground in Chigwell, where I worked for a couple of years. I wouldn't say I enjoyed it immensely at Tottenham. They were going through a bit of a transition. They were trying to buy a new training ground, and there was obviously lots going on, and I didn't really it wasn't really a good fit for me in terms of what I wanted to achieve. So when the opportunity came up to go to Arsenal, it was something that I jumped at, and it was, it wasn't one of those where I regret my decision to go to Tottenham, because not at all. It helped open up the door to move on to Arsenal, and it was, again, all of a sudden you start to define your skill sets from a groundsman looking after a cricket square and having longer grass on a rugby pitch and all these kind of things, to actually honing the skills into what's required as a football groundsman. And in my time at Spurs, I was lucky enough to work with Paul Jones, who's the head groundsman at the training ground. And these days, he's a really knowledgeable guy who you just wanted to feed you knowledge every day. And I'll be forever grateful for that, because in that 2 years working, 18 months working under him, I learned most of what I know today. It was a very worthwhile 2 years.
So Paul Jones has had an impact, and then Spurs ran its course, and you defected to the other side. You went to the other team in North London, Arsenal. Working there with Steve Braddock, what was your role at Arsenal?
I think everyone's role at Arsenal is to work really, really hard and just be the best that you can be. And that's Steve all over. Is like, if he's going to do something, then he's going to do it to the absolute, highest standard. And it's something that if you don't pick up very quickly when you get there, then it's very, very difficult for you, because everybody else is achieving this really high standard. So you're the odd one out. It's not like, there's always a golden boy and there's always one person achieving a high standard. When you work in Steve's team, everybody achieves a high standard. Everybody is, working very, very hard to reach the top level. And it's something that it rubs off on you. No matter, what you think and of what you think of individuals. Like, whenever they leave Arsenal, it's generally to go on to bigger, better things, because of the way that Steve's honed your skills and coached you, even without trying. He doesn't make a conscious effort to make you a better groundsman. It's just something that happens because you're following, the way that he works and his philosophy.
Well, I've always likened Steve to a little bit like the West Ham of the turf industry, where he's kind of like the Academy of Turf in many ways. He's produced so many guys that have gone on to real big jobs. Yourself, Darren at Tottenham, Paul out at Madrid, Scott at Watford. The list goes on, doesn't it? So there's plenty of them there, and I know he's quite proud of some of the things that these guys have gone on to do. But equally, I think from your point of view, what I hear is he's a hard taskmaster, but you really learn a lot and you come out of it, in a much better place than you started, yeah?
Steve isn't a guy who's really technical and full of scientific formulas. Like, he doesn't baffle you with science. Everything's very practical, and every theory that he applies is done out on the pitch. And he's just trying to get a response, trying to get a reaction, trying to get the outcome that he had in his mind, and he strives to achieve that every day. Because you might look at it and think it's the best pitch in the world, but Steve will look at it and he'll see it from another angle. He's like, yeah, but this isn't quite right, or when the player does this, or when the grass does that. And so he's always looking at it from with a very, very practical set of eyes, and that's almost the way I am now, in the way that I won't baffle people with science. Like, we'll just talk about what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve, and I like to think that by talking straightforward to people about what we're doing, people go away with a little bit of knowledge and a bit more understanding, and they can look at a pitch one day and go, it doesn't look that great, and rather than going, why does it not look great, they're like, oh yeah, he might have scarified that, or he's stripping it back to bring it back even better, or the colour's not quite right, maybe it's a bit off feed, and just really basic simple things, or it looks like it's too much water or not enough water. These are things that you can look at a pitch and know straight away, and this is the things that when I look at a pitch, I'm not thinking about, what the pH is and the CEC of the pitch and like the temperature in the soil, all of that stuff like is secondary almost to like when you start to have an issue, you go, okay, like now we need to check these things and see what's going on.
So you kind of developed your philosophy, shall we say, under Braddock's mentorship, shall we call it that? You stayed there quite a while, I think. Was it quite a few years? Was it nearly 9 years, something like that?
It was 9 years, and it was 9 years because I was very, very happy there, because it was a very good team, a very skilled team. The conditions at the club were very, very good. And when I looked around the UK, I couldn't see anywhere better to work. So I always had the desire to be a grounds manager, like the boss, but I didn't want to leave a place like Arsenal and go on to something that was at a lower level and having to build my way back up. And I couldn't see a way where I could take a drop in standards to get to where I am. So I probably stayed a bit too long.
So St George's Park came up with the FA then.
It was a really interesting one because after about 8 years at Arsenal, I went to Steve and I told him honestly, and I was like, I love it here, but I need something more. Like I need a project, I need some responsibility, I need to do something. And I said to him, I can't find anything in this country that I want to do, so I'm going to start looking abroad. So I started to reach out to people on the continent, in France, Spain, Germany, Italy, like seeing if there was any opportunity, but it's a very different market on the continent. And I was starting to lose hope a little bit. And then the job came up at St George's Park, and I had no confidence in myself to go for that job. I thought that was a job that was really for someone who had vast experience as a head groundsman, and you were going in to work for Alan Ferguson, who is a very well respected groundsman himself, and he'll be looking for something a bit more than me, I thought. So I'll be forever grateful to Alan for giving me that opportunity to go and show that I could do the job there. So he took a bit of a risk, I think, because I didn't have that experience. But one of his objectives as head of grounds and estates for the FA was to put in place 2 young, hungry head groundsmen at both the venues, at Wembley and St George's Park. And obviously he did that with Carl, and I was lucky enough to be the one he chose at St George's Park. So
a big step up. Obviously Alan moved on, and then you were kind of left reporting without an overall manager between yourself and Carl. So you again had to take a step up there, I guess. And that was that a different type of reporting to somebody that wasn't necessarily from a turf background?
It was a bit of a baptism of fire, to be honest. There was a lot of things I wasn't sure about, and I had a lot of things I had to feel my way around. And I think it was the same for Carl. But we were very, very fortunate that we had a guy who was a project manager, effectively. He was employed by the FA as head of property. The pitches, grounds and estates fell into property. So we ended up reporting to this guy who had no background of turf whatsoever. But he was a very, very clever guy. And he understood that he had 2 quite good, quite hungry, quite enthusiastic young guys who wanted to achieve a higher level and wanted to take things forward, and he placed a lot of trust in us. He let us lead on a lot of things, and when we needed reining in, he reined us in, and when something we needed help because it wasn't going in the right direction, he'd step in and he'd help us. And other than that, he just sat in the background and let us do our own thing. And we both made lots of mistakes, but at the same time, we both learnt a lot very, very quickly. And again, like that guy, like I owe him a lot because he didn't try to micromanage me. He didn't try to tell me what I should be doing. He just tried to stop me having a disaster and making like a big mistake. And again, that's that's the type of management that is really special in this day and age. Then it was a strange way to report to someone, but also for me, it worked perfectly.
Sounds like he allowed you to grow as well. So as a manager and as a professional, I think you've stated, all throughout this so far that, your first ambition that you stated to somebody in Turfcare was you're going to be the head man at Barcelona in 10 years' time. Well, you're not quite in Barcelona. Octavi's still got that job. So should we tell him to watch his back? Or
I couldn't go to Barcelona because there's a project there and someone's done a very good job of it.
Okay, so you want to put your mark on something rather than just kind of keep it where it was. So obviously you've stated that you were looking at working abroad. How did the opportunity to move down to Nice come up then?
It's an interesting one, really. Nice came to St George's Park last summer for pre-season, and by all accounts, I think they had a very good time. And I didn't know the background of the club, or I didn't realise the issues they were having or anything with their pitches. And I asked for feedback from every camp that came, like pre-season camp that came to St George's Park. I requested feedback, and I got one piece of feedback from them, and that was like, we've been here a week and we haven't had any injuries. And I was like, that's really nice to hear, because like my philosophy is kind of around keeping the players safe on the pitch and making sure they have a good interaction with the surface. So I was like, that's great, but not the one I was expecting. I was expecting, the pitch was amazing, or the facilities were fantastic, or the weather's been good, and I didn't really think any more of it. And off they went. And then I had a phone call one day from, I guess, like a mutual friend, and he was talking to me about a project in Nice. And I was thinking, I had a French guy working for me, and I was thinking like they were going to take him as head groundsman. I was expecting them to say, so would you mind if we took this guy off to be head groundsman in Nice? And I was going to be like, absolutely, like I would love that more than anything. And at the end of the conversation, he was like, so would you be interested? I was like, so it sounds like quite an interesting project. I said, you just have to get them to call me. Give them my number, and if they want to call me, like they can do. I was actually out for dinner with Charles Henderson and Carl, like on a little mini grassroots tour, when my phone rings and it's a French number, and I'm like, surely not. And it was, the team manager at the club who coordinates most of the operation here, and he wanted to discuss the project with me. So it was an interesting conversation. He sent me some emails on like what the project was and what they were looking to do. And then I said, I need to speak with the manager to see what his philosophy is, to see whether we can fit together in terms of what I want to achieve with pitches and what he wants from his pitches. So then that was another interesting thing. I'm standing out on the pitch at St George's Park one day with Mark Atkins and doing some soil sampling, and I get another French phone number come up. I pick up the phone, it's Patrick Vieira. Okay. I was like, are you sure? And I knew it was him because he's very smooth when he speaks English. So next thing I knew, I was flying out to Nice to meet him and the director of football to discuss if I'd like to come over.
So you were sort of tapped up, really, weren't you? In football terms, you was tapped up in football terms.
I guess so. Yeah, it took a few months. Like they called me in. I first got the call in September. Then they called me early October when I was on that grassroots tour, and then it took till December for them to get everything together. So it's why I started in January.
I know when you told me, it wasn't a surprise that you were going abroad. It might have been a surprise that it was Nice. It might have been a surprise at the timing of it. What really attracted you to it?
Certainly not the weather, because as I explained, like I don't like sunshine. and you get over 300 days of sunshine here. So
that's not a spray tan you've got then?
it was, to be honest with you, it was the blank canvas, as I said. Like they had nothing here, literally nothing. They're a club that has never had a groundsman. They've never really had a good pitch, but the club want to go in a new direction. The club want to grow. The club wants to improve in every area, and the pitches was one of the main ones, because they had a lot of injuries every year, and they're blaming it on the pitches. After coming and having a look at the pitches, I agreed with them. There's some problems, and the good thing about the project here is, yes, there is nothing, but there's also, I mean, there's only at the minute 4.5 natural pitches, a couple of synthetic pitches. And what really attracted me was that in the pipeline there is some new pitches that we're going to build. The idea that's at the minute, it's like a site that's used for another purpose. So it's not like, oh, there's some grass, go and put a pitch on it, go and mark it out. It's nothing. So like to do with football. So we're going to have to level it and construct basically a whole new training ground. I was really excited by that prospect of being able to manage that project. I got a taste for managing projects when I was at St George's Park. Like I worked very closely with the project manager there, and we delivered a lot of things that weren't necessarily football pitch related. They were doing roadways around pitches. We were doing car parks with schemes for like landscaping, and all that kind of stuff was really cool. And like you can start to envisage things and how they look, and you start to look at the viewpoint across a pitch and what's behind it, and all of a sudden you don't think too much about the bit in the middle, because I've done that for 15 years, and that bit, I'm not going to say it looks after itself, because it doesn't, but it's quite easy for me. So the idea of delivering some projects appealed to me. And then secondary to that was the climate. I mean, everyone says that the English groundsmen are the best groundsmen in the world, but I believe that to be true to a point. But how can you be the best groundsman in the world if all you've ever worked with is ryegrass?
Okay, yeah. So you're not challenging yourself with something different?
Where you've got quite a temperate climate where you can kind of get grass growth all year round. How where, your temperature swing is 25, 30 degrees. How about going somewhere where the temperature swing can be 50 degrees? Where all of a sudden you go into two different grass types throughout the season, in season, and having to manage a transition, keeping the pitches playable, keeping the players happy, coaching staff happy. For me, that was quite an exciting challenge. Like, not only do I get to work with a new climate and a new type of grass, but I also then have to make it work in season.
Okay.
That's the grass nerdy bit. Like, I wanted the project for building the pitches and the infrastructure, but then that little bit was the sort of like the cherry on the cake, to be honest.
And the lifestyle down there? I mean, you've up sticks, you've gone down there. Have you embraced it?
I'd like to think so. It would be a little bit easier if my French was better. I have lessons every week, but it's quite complicated for me. So I'm trying to learn. I think once I learn the language a bit better, I'll integrate a bit better. I've been very lucky that I found a group of French guys that one of them runs a fanzine at the club, and he invited me to lunch one day, and I thought it was going to be a bit of a difficult affair. The French like their food, and I was like, well, I just eat it mainly, like lots of it, and then they like to smell their wine and like spit it out when they're tasting it and stuff, and I like to just drink it. So I was like, this could be a complicated day. And 15 hours later, after quite the session, I realised that I'd found some French guys that I was going to get along with quite well. So that really helped. And then it's difficult to not love waking up every morning, putting on shorts and t-shirt and walking to work, biking to work, whatever mode of transport I choose. and in the evening coming home and sitting on the terrace, like again in shorts and t-shirt, like it's very, very comfortable, and it's a nice place to be. The pace of life is a little bit different, probably a bit too slow for me, to be honest. Things don't happen quickly.
Is that socially or work-wise or both?
Both. Work-wise especially, is a lot of bureaucracy to get through, to get anything done. There's a lot of people to talk to, and there's a lot of politics. That's one thing I'm really glad that I've started to learn, started to navigate. But then also socially, like people don't go out for dinner until like 9, 10 o'clock. Right? I'm normally tucked up in bed at 9:30, so that's been a bit of a change. But I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it, and I've tried to embrace it. And I said to myself, you know, I wanted to be here for a few years. If I loved it that much, I'd stay. If I only stay a year, then I can still say that it was a great experience. So I was very open-minded about, you know, coming down here, and I saw it as a no-lose situation, to be honest, because if I came down here and I couldn't embrace the culture and I couldn't get on with the French and everything, I could just say it's not for me. Like, you know, it's not a failure. It's just one of those where I'm an Englishman who needs to go back to England and work in England, or it can work for me, and you know, I can really embrace it and be very successful.
So far, you're enjoying it. Has it broadened your horizons to maybe say, once you've done this project, the next thing might be somewhere else? You might get that Barcelona job in the future, perhaps. You know?
So, no, as I said, I don't see my future as being a grounds manager. To be honest, I've got a lot of experience of looking after grass, and I feel like I can utilise that somewhere else in a different field. Maybe as a project manager, maybe as a consultant. You know, I like delivering projects when things sit still and they're not moving. Like, oh, we did that project, now we're going to do nothing for 2 years.
Yeah.
I get bored, shall we say?
Yeah, sure.
The same mundane thing of like, for example, at St George's Park, if we're not delivering projects, then we're waiting for 5 England camps a year. They're like the highlights. And then a pre-season camp, right? That's like the second best bit, because then you have new teams coming and using your pitches. The rest of the year, it's you know, we're just looking after grassroots and everything in between up to that level. It's the same thing every day, just trying to keep grass on your pitches. Whereas I've done that now, like, and to be honest, like, if the job doesn't have a project with it, if it doesn't have some kind of investment that you need to put your expertise into, then it doesn't really appeal to me.
So with this project you're doing now, what do you think the time span is of it to get to the training ground that you're envisaging and bringing together at the moment?
If you talk to the club, like, they would say as soon as possible, because there is a desperate need for more pitches. But this is France, and sometimes these political situations can play out for 3 or 4 years.
Right.
So we might get to the stage where if we're not moving in 2 years, then, you know, it might be time for me to move on, because by then the pitches that I'm looking after will be very, very good, and the guys that are looking after them will be, you know, very well, what's the word? Like sharpened, should I say? Like the guys looking after them will be in a position where they don't need me, because they know what they're doing every day. There is nice little bits where I get to go to ahead of a pre-season camp. Like, I'll go and have a look at the pitch and try and select a good pitch for the team, but it's not enough to keep you employed for a year. So we'll see. We'll see. It's all on the new project. I think I can achieve everything else that the club expect for me in the next 18 months or so.